When you think about this win and you think about Rafael Fiziev, what is your biggest takeaway from Saturday night?
Well, I thought that going into this fight, he would have to answer a few questions. One being it's a 5-round fight, right? Like, how does he handle himself? It's a step up in competition. He's going against a guy. I mean, this guy's the original OG. I still think that Dos Anjos has the best pound-for-pound resume of anybody. Now, whether he won or lost, but he stood in there against the very best at the peaks of their careers, just constantly. So Fiziev was just kind of the next guy in his willingness to stand in against these guys. So, but knowing that and being a gamer, and also the fact that I really believed RDA, he's just a smart guy too. Like, he knows how to beat certain talent, and I thought that he might try to drag this to the ground and make it that kind of fight. He certainly tried, and I think that Fiziev answers some questions in that regard, just kind of keeping it standing. I think in the 4th round, right, was the only time that RDA was kind of able to successfully maneuver that whole thing. But I just, in general, man, just composure, just the way he handled himself. I was really impressed when he fought Brad Riddell previously, just a stand-up. I knew, a lot of people know that he has that stand-up and his footwork, switching stances, all the stuff he does so well. I thought that was all pretty much in evidence. He just looked really good, man. And I think when you fight a guy like RDA and you're able to put it together over the course of a fight, and especially to get it done in the championship rounds in the 5th round like that, where it kind of feels like there's not a finish coming, just really impressive stuff, man. I thought he kind of checked all the boxes of is he ready to jump up into that like top 5 contention space. I think he answered those questions.
Yeah, I share your estimate, your assessment, I should say. The takedown defense for Fiziev was 95% coming in. What is it now? Let's see. How much did this fight change it? It's now at 92%, so a slight dent in it, but still about
Wow.
90, which is really remarkable. And to that point, even when there was one time, I think, there was a clear one-time pick-up takedown in that 4th, right? And then there was another one where he was able to kick out the post leg. But even then, Fiziev just didn't allow him to do really anything with it. So, like, the takedown defense wasn't perfect, but it was pretty close. That finishing combination where he switched stance through combination, throws the body kick, throws the left hook, and then throws the right hook, and then throws the left over the top, and then caught him clean. RDA didn't see it. Dude, that's just super money. It's not even like power carrying late, more than it's just his athleticism carrying late, and then obviously his creativity is still there. It didn't fall off. I got to tell you, though, my biggest takeaway, and this is a bit of a broader conversation, we'll talk about RDA in just a second, it's that the guys in that top 5 who we associate as like the kings of lightweight, your Chandlers, Poiriers, Fergusons, to an extent McGregor, he's down, I think in the teens at this point in terms of ranking, but we kind of hold him a little bit in that space.
And why he's still there, I don't know.
Right, exactly. I got to say, we can't declare that their day is done. Poirier and Chandler might fight. Anybody who has to fight Poirier has a difficult fight on their hands. Anybody who has to fight Chandler has a difficult day on their hands. But, dude, the wave of replacements, they're not just, like, coming over the hills. They're here. They're here.
Yes.
The march to replace the existing sort of firmament of 155 guys, obviously Islam has already been there and Charles is sort of reborn. But the rest of that crew, your Gamrots, your Saryukians, now you can add Fiziev, the Ismagulovs. Dude, do you get the same feeling that I do? It's like it's not a matter of if they're going to take over. It is merely looking at your clock and seeing how much longer the sand in the hourglass has to go.
And even like Jalen Turner, right? Who's like showing up.
Right.
I agree with you 100%, man. I don't think I've ever seen it quite like this. Now, generally speaking, when there are guys who are staples at the top of the division, we saw it in light heavyweight forever, where there were just some relics from earlier eras that were holding down the top, 5-2, and then there would be John Jones or whatever. It's tough to break in there, and there's almost never a moment where there's an equal amount of guys who just look like they're going to hostile take over once they get there. Once they're able to break into that space, you just feel like these guys are going to they'll author a whole new rankings, right? Because I feel like most of these guys are dog-eared to basically, there's a few of them that I'm like, they could be champions. They'll definitely be contenders. They'll definitely challenge for a title at some point. And to have like 5, 6 guys coming up like that, I agree with it. I think you worded it perfectly. It's like they are at the gates and they're coming up. And we're getting it now where guys like Gamrot, who fought a couple of weeks ago, is calling out Justin Gaethje, because I think Gaethje is the one dude who you can kind of poke at a little bit and be like, hey, if we're trying to get the olive branch to get up into that space, maybe he's the right guy to challenge. And Fiziev did the exact same thing. I love it, man. At some point, and then very soon, probably by the second half of this year, as we get into it, that's going to be the case. All these guys we're talking about are going to be right there in that contention. So I love it, man. It's a happening division. It's like what's going on in that division. It just activates the imagination because most of these guys have not fought each other, so it just kind of opens everything wide open there.
When you saw Saturday's main event, did you see? Okay, I definitely see title contender in Fiziev's future. No denying that. I just find it seems very difficult to believe that a guy who's done what he's done, which now includes finishing Rafael Dos Anjos, won't contend for a title. Do you see him winning one?
Oof. Now, because of the talent we just were talking about, man, it might be tough for him to do it. I could see it, but I feel like there are guys who will know how to fight him. He's still green. You get guys like this who kind of make very, I don't know about quick, man, because he's been there, he's been doing it for a little while, and he's been looking good. But it's a fairly rapid ascension into the space. You just feel like a couple of these guys are very bright fighters. They're very solid fighters all over wherever the fight goes. They might be able to game plan for him a little bit. And I feel like he hasn't really faced that during this run where he's got a guy who just knows, and what is his plan B, what is his plan C in those situations. I could definitely see him getting it, though, man, because I just feel like his stand-up is that good. I feel like you mentioned his 92% takedown defense. I think that's pretty remarkable. He just does things really well in there, man. And to finish RDA, who hadn't been finished, I think was Eddie Alvarez, right? But way back in 2016... to finish RDA, that's a statement, man. That tells me that he can hang with these guys, but that's a lot of experience toward the top there that he's going to have to get through.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I mean, I can list off some of the losses that RDA has where he didn't get finished. So, for example, he lost to Chiesa and Edwards, didn't get finished. How about Kamaru and Colby Covington at 170? True. Didn't finish him.
That's crazy.
Tony Ferguson didn't. You're right about Eddie. Eddie did. Now, that was also coming off of he had a really bad weight cut at that time. He wasn't making 155 very cleverly. Khabib couldn't finish him. Gleason Tebow couldn't finish him. Let's see. Clay Guida got the submission from the jaw injury. Tyson Griffin couldn't finish him. And then Jeremy Stevens in his literal UFC debut. That's it.
Did you even mention Leon Edwards? That's crazy, too.
Yes, Leon Edwards, but that was just a decision. That was the Chiesa and Edwards fight were next together.
Right.
That's it. So to put away a guy like that in the fifth round, and to your point, he had just had a really good fourth round, at least, relatively speaking anyway, good fourth round. I thought for sure Fiziev was kind of fading there. The commentators were talking about it, and then he comes right out in the fifth and blitzed him.
Yeah, and it's funny because I thought the exact same thing. I actually got up, went in the kitchen for something. I came back and I see him celebrating. I mean, what the hell did I miss? So I had to catch it all on replay. But yeah, man, to come out like that, and that's tough, dude. After you fought 20 minutes, a guy like RDA, to come out there and still have that in your tank, to go do that and to land that effectively, that combination, really beautiful stuff, man.
What do you make of Fiziev as a possible, celebrated figure? Because he does speak English. It's still pretty broken, but it's usable.
Yeah.
And more to the point, he had that back and forth with Conor on Twitter. One thing I'm wondering is when you get these guys coming up the ranks, your Saryukians, your Ismagulovs, and so forth, the question is not, are they talented enough to be in this place? I mean, they're taking over the water. Do these guys all from Eastern Europe or parts of Asia, depending on how the map looks?
Yeah.
Dude, they're invasive species. You know what I mean? Once they start,
so true.
Once they start setting up in the pond, all the other wildlife goes away. That's kind of how I feel about them. However, there is a question about to what extent these guys can actually be turned into stars, and it's not just a language thing, because you and I both know Khabib's English was good but never great, far from it. But it didn't matter. He had a style. He had a certain swag. He had a certain I smash and all that kind of stuff. Can these guys not be Khabib? But do you wonder, whatever their talent level, is there going to be any corresponding issue and I want you to focus on Fiziev in particular, maybe elevating them to enough to be a pay-per-view attraction?
That is a toughie, man. I haven't seen it. I feel like Fiziev has something about him that's a little more charismatic than some of the other guys. I feel like he wants to play the game. That's one thing. And he's not forcing it. I think he's staying within his natural promotion, like how he wants to be on camera and all that stuff. So I feel like he's kind of doing okay. I have to wait and see how that plays out. But some of the other guys, it's going to be tough, man. I mean, I think that you're right. It does feel like an invasive species because you're used to a certain thing going on, and now all these cats, man, with OVs in their name and Gamrot. I mean, Polish fight. Like it's like they all have they're all more action than words right now. But they all have that feel to them, like they're going to do something remarkable in the sport. I don't know. After the Izzy criticism, for instance, he's one of the great promoters in the game, but it sort of backfires in another way when maybe you don't live up to whatever the expectations you're putting down are. Sometimes I'm like, in our new age, in the way that we're going at ESPN, the new audience, do they care more about the action in the end? Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of that because people get more technical. They watch it. They kind of understand. I'd like to think this anyway. They like to understand what they're watching a little better. Especially with betting boom. The betting boom makes people pay attention to technique way more. Like you understand guys' weaknesses if you're betting on him and you see him getting carved up in some way. It's a very interesting dynamic. But I think that most of the guys you're mentioning, if they're pay-per-view attractions, it'll probably be because they are so dominant or they're just that good, like Khabib in the end. But I don't really see any of them where you're like, he's a cult star because of what he's saying or, acting or calling guys out. None of the names you mentioned has that kind of thing going on for them.
I will say one of the bad things about it's interesting you make one of the points that's good about betting, namely that people are paying more attention, which I think is on some level true, at least for the degenerates. However, on the other hand, how many times on social have you seen some fighter who just lost on Twitter or Instagram or something come on and be like, hey, it didn't go my way and thanks for the support. And then they get lit up in the comments by the degenerates being like, hey, you ruined my parlay. Let me explain something.
Stupid.
Yeah, if you send a losing fighter a complaint because they busted your parlay, just know there's no level below that is where loserdom exists. Like, that's it. That's loserdom personified right there.
And we're seeing it more than ever now with all of the gambling sites and making it legal. I just feel like I see that so much now, man. And I hear people talk about it all the time. Oh, I had a 4-teamer and he blew it for me or whatever. And it also puts all the the judges on blast, right? Like, so the judging becomes more of a big deal in the sport in terms of that sort of thing. But you're right. I can't stand it. It's just such the game wasn't invented for that kind of very personal status on how you're viewing it. Like I'm like, if you lost, sorry about that, but I don't want to hear it, man. I don't want to hear that. I do think, though, seriously, I've talked to a lot of guys who just got into betting fights, but they immediately start to understand what the guy's strengths and weaknesses are by seeing it rather than being told. You know what I mean? Like they see it in real action. And so they have legit questions now that are actually kind of logical questions, reasonable doubts about whatever is going on with the matchup style, which is kind of remarkable. That's the phenomenon of today. I feel like people are actually learning the sport through betting, which is bizarre, man.
Which is sad. It's like, how did you learn math? Through gambling, actually. That's how I learned math and statistics.
And math.
Yes. I bet my mortgage on blackjack. All right.
Come on, house
now,
payment.
There is another question related to Fiziev, which is who he called out. And he called out Justin Gaethje. And the reason why that's interesting is because Justin Gaethje did just have, I think, or is about to have nose surgery. But it's also the guy who the previous winner in a lightweight main event on Fight Night called out in Mateusz Gamrot. So Gamrot and Fiziev have both called out Justin Gaethje. If you were matchmaker, which direction would you go?
That's so tough, man. Is it? I think I would ultimately go Fiziev.
I think that's the right answer. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that he's. I think that where he's at, and also just the kind of prospect when you think about that fight, I think it's a lot of fun. I do think that they match up really well, and I think Fiziev would. I mean, that's an action fight, and both guys are getting they're known for their end of the night bonuses, however you want to take that. Like, I think that just makes for a very good fight. And I think if you're trying to clear a hurdle into that top space, obviously a guy like Gaethje leaves you transformed a lot of times. Like you go in, you come out a different person than you went into a fight. But I think that if you're a very good striker like Fiziev, you might see something in what you could do with a Gaethje fight and say that's my money fight. So from both perspectives, I like it. I really do like that fight.
Yeah, it's hard to go wrong in either direction. I just feel like with Gamrot, okay, again, you could make a case for either, and neither fight would be bad, just as a general blanket statement. I have a feeling Gamrot might wrestle him a lot, and that would be good for Gamrot, obviously, and he could certainly win that way. In fact, I might favor both of those guys to beat Gaethje, to be honest with you. However, I think the way Fiziev will fight him, which is standing, not directly in front of him, but standing with him and having to deal with some of that punishment as he dishes it back out, is just going to be A, a little bit better for the fans, and B, we were talking about, can these guys be stars? Fiziev's already got a little bit of that cooking, a little bit of it. Beating Gaethje, should he be able to do that in the way in which he would fight him, would go a lot further in my mind. Fair?
I agree with that. Yes, if you're trying to clear a hurdle into, I guess, more of the mainstream or whatever you want to say, like into broader consciousness in the fight game, I think that going through Gaethje, because people pay attention to his fights, his style, all that stuff. A lot of people, too, just think he's a berserker that's, if he gets solved, it's usually... If he gets solved, it's usually after he puts you into trouble, like with Charles Oliveira and all this stuff. So there's a little bit of a test and with your chin and all that stuff. I think that all of that would come into play. But man, I would love to see it. I know that, like, for you as an analytical mind in the game who likes the technique, I bet you this would be a very fun breakdown afterwards, because I think that the tables would probably turn 3 times in it, and there'd be turning points and plot twists and everything. I'd love to see it. I really would, man. I actually. In prospect, when you think about certain fights, you get that sense of what they would be able to deliver. And I think that my immediate thing when he's talking about it, and I was thinking about Fiziev, I keep saying Fiziev, but like Fiziev when he's...
a guy told us at the awards that's how you pronounce it, but I have no idea.
Well, however, right. Everybody keeps pronouncing it differently, but just contemplating that fight gets me excited. So I love fights like that, man. If that's the one that happens, I'd be pretty happy about that.